Um, okay, alright, so welcome to Selenium online training and also welcome to Automation World. So definitely you guys will be feeling interested to learn this Selenium using testing using automation, so which is the Selenium open source tool. So before starting with the Selenium, let's try to see some basic thing, which is nothing but our manual testing overview or the process which we do follow right now. And also we will try to understand what's the reason that we have to switch to automation tools and so on, right? So if you look at here, this slide shows we have a manual tester where this manual tester will be documenting the manual test cases, right? So this guy will be working on developing or designing of the manual test cases, so which we all of us know, right? So I think most of us are already working on manual testing, so we know what is the process of manual testing. So someone, right, will be developing the manual steps and also the expected result for each and every step. So if I do something, something will be expecting by us, right? So if that expected things are not happening, then we will obviously fail the test case and test step and then so on, right? So this is the process. So what we will do is someone will be writing the test cases and maybe someone will be executing the test cases on top of the browser. So browser can be anything out of these things, right? So these are the steps and expected results which we will be calling these things as test cases. These test cases will be documented somewhere in a centralized location or a place where everyone in the company can access it and can start testing, right? And one more thing, if we observe here, all the test cases of the application will be developed in a language called English, where everybody can understand that language, right? So even whoever the people in India can read the test cases and even they should be able to execute the test case. So if I talk about some other country people or some other state people or some other religion or some other anything, whoever, because English is the common language for everyone, standard language, so anybody can understand English. So obviously anybody can start testing by reading these test cases. So that's the reason the language preferred for manual testing is English, right? So this is the process, right? So someone will be manual testers will be documenting and maybe someone else will be executing the test cases on top of the browser. So that is how the flow is with the manual testing right now. So with this flow we have some drawbacks, right? So let us try to understand what are those drawbacks which we have with this manual process, right? So the second slide shows the same manual process with the list of drawbacks whatever we have with the manual process, manual testing process, right? Okay, so let's assume that we have very less time and we have to go with the release, right? And we don't have more time and we don't have enough resources to complete our testing, right? Let's assume we have only 2 days to go with the release or just 3-4 days to go with the release, and we have very less resources, 2 or 3 manual resources, right? And at that point of time, on of sudden we cannot hire any resource. So even though we hire, there will be some set of challenges that they may have to get some KT on the application and the functionality, and they may have to look into test cases and then they may start working into testing, right? So it's not that easy that onboarding a resource and resource start working very quickly, right? So there will be some challenge, right? So if we have very less time, obviously we cannot execute many test cases, right, within a very small time frame. So that's a big challenge which we have with the manual process, right? That is one thing. The second one, if you look at here, The second one is less accuracy. Let's assume, say I have 10,000 test cases where out of 10, 8,000 test cases are very complex. So complex, I mean I have lot of calculations on each and every test step or test case. So if I have calculations, obviously I may have to take a pen, paper, and I may have to keep, along with the calculator, I may wanted to go with some calculations, and then I have to validate those calculations against the application. And if I feel the calculations are exactly matching, then only I may have to go and pass the test case. Else obviously we have to fail the test case. So if our application is such a complexity, then obviously we have to spend lot of time than the usual time to validate the test cases, to execute the test cases, right? So which is more complexity, and obviously it will take a lot of time, right? And in that case, if I get lot of calculations within a day to calculate, at some point of time, obviously I may feel bored, or I may go with some wrong calculations also. There are more chances that we may do mistakes, right? So at that point of time, obviously we cannot assure the calculation part is really accurate, right? So this is one more drawback which we have with the manual process, right? And next one is tiredness. So if someone asks me to do the same task for 5 times or 10 times or maybe 100 times, right, I will feel tired. So till like 7 hours or 8 hours will be the working hours for every person. So if it exceeds more than that, 10 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours, so obviously human manual testers will be feeling tired, right? And the next one is cannot perform the same task repeatedly, right? So as I told, if someone asks me to do the same task again and again and again for 5-10 times, obviously I'll be feeling bored, right? So I may expect some new task, right? So whenever we go with manual, so we may get some chance that we may repeatedly wanted to do the same functionality testing multiple times within a day also, right? So it depends again. So these are some basic drawbacks which we have with the manual process. So these, in order to overcome whatever the drawbacks which we have with the manual process, we are going to switch to automation testing, right? So if you look at here, yes, we have many drawbacks with manual process. Once we switch to some software or some automation tool, obviously we are going to overcome all these drawbacks. So if someone asks me to test 5 complex test cases, yes, obviously I may take a day or maybe more than that also. Instead of that, if there are some automation scripts already written, and if we give that scripts to a tool to execute, the tool may not take more than 5 minutes also. So the tool will be very fast than the human being, right? And obviously the computer will be 100% accuracy. Even a manual testers can do a mistake, but a software will not, right? And tiredness. So yes, obviously I will be feeling tired if I work more than 8 hours or so. But if I ask a mission or a software to continuously run, it doesn't feel any tiredness at all. It will be continuously working. It will continuously work without any feeling tiredness or bored. So yes, even a software or a mission can do a repeated task without any problem, right? But a manual tester may not, right? So yes, these are the basic drawbacks which we have, right? So let us go ahead and see what are the how the automation uh, overview will look like, right? So the next slide, if you look at here, right? So what we have done is, in previous slide we have uh, a manual tester and a manual testing process, and then the browsers at the end. So what we have done is we just removed a manual tester and replaced manual tester with automation tester. So if you observe, nowadays most of the companies is doing that. So even though they have a manual testing requirement, but still they want a people who knows automation or who worked on automation. That is how the market is right now, right? So we are just trying to replace manual tester with automation tester, and the place wherever we documented manual test cases, we are replacing with some a component called IDE and the software, and at the end we have the browser. So the starting and ending is same almost. So we have browser here and also there, we have a manual tester here and also there, right? And what we have done is we just replaced manual process with automation tool and something called IDE. So let's try to understand in some time what is IDE and what is software. Okay, so we have an automation test engineer here, we have a software. Okay, so here the software means it's not only the selenium, right? In market for automation testing we have multiple softwares. Selenium is one of the software, Sikuli is one of the software, QTP, Sahi, and so many n number of tools we have in the market for automation testing, right? So here what happening is automation test engineer will develop some set of lines of code inside IDE, right? So he may write some multiple lines of code in IDE. Each and every line of code whatever this guy is writing, there will be a predefined code available in the software, something like this, right? So for every line of code there will be a predefined what to say methods, predefined code available in the software. Let's say this guy first line he's writing open Firefox browser. So he's writing open Firefox browser. For opening a Firefox browser, there is a predefined method in this software. The software can be anything, either it can be a QTP or Selenium or Sahi or anything else. And that particular method in that software will open the browser. That software will be opening the browser. That means in manual testing, manual tester will open the browser explicitly. But here, this guy is asking software to open the browser. Instead of he opening, he is asking software to open the browser, right? And the next line he is writing just something to navigate to some Gmail application. So for that he has written one more line of code. That line of code internally interacted with the method present in the software, and that software will navigate the user to this particular application. And third line maybe he's trying to enter some username with some line of code, and that line of code will try to enter some username on top of Gmail application, right? That is how it will be working. The software can be anything, but the way of every software working is the same, right? So what is going to happen? So IDE is the environment. So we'll be calling it as integrated development environment, where developers or maybe the testers will be writing some lines of code over here. Those lines of code will be communicating with the software, and software will be trying to perform some actions on top of the browser, right? Software will open the browser, software will navigate to some Gmail application, software will enter some username, password, log into application, log out from application, close the browser. So whatever we do manually, we will ask a software to do that, right? We will ask a software to do that, right? So Softwares are so many things. IDEs also so many in the market. So Eclipse is one of the most popular IDE in the market. Right. So we also have IntelliJ, NetBeans. So some companies will be using IntelliJ. Some companies may be using NetBeans, or My Eclipse is also one of the licensed tools. So Eclipse is open source. IntelliJ, NetBeans, My Eclipse, other IDEs which available in the market are licensed ones, right? So but in our course we will be using the open source one, which is Eclipse IDE, right, which is the open source and which is most popular one. 90% of the companies will be using Eclipse, so we will go with Eclipse itself, right? So I hope now we understood the flow of automation. So what we are doing is we are going to write some lines of code in Eclipse IDE. Those lines of code will internally talk to software, and software will be performing some actions on top of the browser. That is what we are going to achieve over here. And here the one thing which we have to understand here is, in manual process we have written a test cases in a language called English, as we already discussed. But here the software, either it can be a Selenium or QTP or Sahi or any other software, cannot the software cannot understand the language, right? So software cannot understand English language. So that is the reason, right? So we are going with uh, different languages, right? So just a second. Okay, so what we are going to do is, every software can understand some set of languages. What does that exactly mean is, Selenium can understand Java, Selenium can understand PHP, Ruby, Perl, Python, or multiple languages Selenium can understand. So that means if I wanted to communicate with someone, obviously I may have to know the language which he knows. Right, here every one of us know English, so I can communicate to every one of you on English language, with English language, right? But in the same way, if I wanted to talk to software, then I have to know which language the software can understand, right? So Selenium can understand some set of languages, so even with one of those languages only I can talk to Selenium. That is how it should be, right? So what an automation test engineer has to know is, automation test engineer has to know one of the languages whatever this software can understand, or else obviously he cannot directly communicate with the software, right? Let's say if this software knows let's say if this software knows Java, then we will try to this guy will try to know the software, and then we will try to talk to the software with that particular language, right? So that is how it should be, right? So this is the flow of automation testing, right? So I just wanted to pause here for a second. So anybody has any questions on this so far?
Yes, Mani. When automation can be started in every real project, yeah, initial testing start with a manual, yeah.
Mhm.
If the I mean, yeah, 100% automation can be done in each and every project.
I'll come there. I'll come there. So next
Mhm.
slide will answer your question. Anything else other than that? Okay. All right. Okay. So next slide. So like, however, we have some set of drawbacks with manual process. We also have some set of drawbacks with automation testing also, right? So let us try to understand what are those drawbacks and how what is it we have to do with that. Okay. So the first one over here is lack of automation experts, which is very important for us, right? So now every company is trying to automate their complete test suits, because yes, obviously they wanted to reduce the manual efforts, right? By which by that they can obviously reduce their manual efforts is one thing. Time is very important, and they can also save a lot of money. So instead of having 10 manual research, if they have 2 automation research, obviously their budget also will be more saved in that case actually. So there are multiple advantages. So yes, there are lot of vacancies for automation experts, right? So if we are really learning automation and we are among those experts, then yes, definitely we'll be having a good vacancies for us. That is how the market is right now. And next one is some applications cannot be automated, right? So example, dynamic application. So what does this dynamic applications mean is, let's say if I have a game application where I don't know when an object appears, when it is going to disappear, and at what location it may appear and when it may disappear. So it's completely dynamic, right? So such kind of applications is not preferable for automation, right? So we cannot go with automating such kind of applications. So those kinds of applications will be manually tested, right? So because if I talk about any one static application, so what does static mean? Let me give you an example. Let's say I have a Gmail application. So I may have to log into application, send an email, just as that I have received an email and all, right? So just we can easily know that yes, always my login form is constant, static in that case, right? So there is no changes. It's dynamically, the login form is not dynamically changing. So I no need to worry, right? So what I can do is I can identify the objects and I can run my test case multiple times. But if I talk about the game application, I really don't know when the object may appear and when it is going to disappear and all. So there is no exact expected result. So such kind of applications we cannot automate, right? Because we doesn't know expected result exactly the time, the location, and how long the object will may be. So all such kind of things will be there, right? So we can't obviously uh, you know do that. So the next challenge over here is automation tools are expensive. So what does this statement exactly mean is, so we have so many automation tools in the market. It's not that every tool is free or open source where we can start downloading and we can start using it, right? So when we are talking about Selenium, yes, Selenium is a free and open source tool. Without paying anything, we can start downloading and using it for our automation. But there are some tools in the market like QTP, OATS, and so on, right? Rational functional tool, testing tool, and so on. So those tools are licensed tools where we have to purchase the license and we have to start using those tools, right? So let's say here is our requirement. I have an application where I have to test that application on web based. My application is also web based, and my application is also desktop based, and my application is also mobile based. And I have to test all these three kinds of application with single testing tool, right? At that point of time, if that is my one of the requirement, then obviously I have to go with some tool called like QTP, where QTP is licensed and it is very expensive, right? So to purchase, so obviously, so if my company is very small company, I can't afford that much license to purchase a tool, right? So that would be a challenge for small companies. So what I may have to do is I may have to go for web-based, I may have to go with Selenium. For desktop-based, I may have to go with some other tool. For mobile-based, I may have to go with some other tool again. So for every type of application, I may have to go with different testing tool where there is no coordination between the tools. The tool and each and every tool may be having some limitations, right? So that is how it will be. Right, so these are the some of drawbacks which we also have with automation process. It's not that we have a drawbacks with only with manual, we also have the drawbacks with automation process also. Right, and now coming to your question, right, so can we automate 100% of application? It depends upon the functionality, how it is, right? So there will be some functionalities that where we may have to validate some things by going to some email, like extracting some OTP or clicking on some links present in the emails. So such kind of things maybe will not be possible with the Selenium exactly. So if we still wanted to automate such kind of things, we may go with different other tools like uh, web service testing or something like that. So some that is how the companies will be doing. But yes, obviously Selenium cannot handle all 100% of the functionalities whatever we may have with it, with our applications, right? It completely depends. And sometimes in our applications we will be having some captchas, right? So the purpose where people will be having captchas is to avoid automation, right? So we'll be having some captchas. So whenever we do a testing in our test environments, we may not having captchas. The developers will be removing the captchas just for testing or automation purpose, and whenever it goes live at that point of time stage or live, it will be enabling again. So that is how it will be, right? So such kind of situations, whenever we have those kind of things, it is not preferable for automate. Captures are not preferable for automation. So it is not, we are not going to automate such kind of things again. So some things, few things may not be automatable also, right? So it's not that 100% of the application will be automated. So once we get an application, definitely we have to analyze and see how much percentage of our application can be automated. That is how it should be, right? So these are the drawbacks which we have with the automation testing. So the next slide, types of automation tools. So most of the times people will be getting confused that there are many tools in the market, but what is the purpose or what is the use of each and every tool which we have in the market, right? So if you look at here, we have some tools called functional tools. So every one of us know what is a functional testing and what is performance testing, right? So to test the functional testing, we have some set of specific tools, and here I just listed few among them which are most popular in the market. Selenium, QTP, WinRunner, SQL, all these are most popular tools in the market which we have. And performance testing. So if we wanted to test the performance of our application, then we may have to go with these tools. So the reason I'm just talking about the slide is most of the times people will be getting confused between these types of tools, and also just wanted to give some clarity over here. Okay, so the next slide just says about when exactly we have to go with Selenium. What is the reason that we may have to pick only the Selenium, why not some other tools, right? So here the first one and very important one is functional testing. Yes, if we wanted to test the functionality of the application, then we have to go with, we can go with Selenium, right? So Selenium is mainly for functional testing, not some other types of testings. And next one is to automate web application, right? So as I told, yes, there will be some different types of applications, desktop based, web based, mobile based applications and all, right? Android, iOS, and or some other. applications also. So if our requirement is purely to automate the functionality, and if our application is web application or mobile web application, so in our mobiles also will be having a browsers. So if I wanted to test my application on my mobile browser, yes, we can prefer Selenium again. And the last point is very, very, very important for Selenium. So that's the reason that because of this last point, Selenium is really the more popular in the market. With the help of Selenium, we can test on different OS and different browsers. We can test on Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or any of the browsers whatever we have in the market, including the new browsers whatever we have, a Microsoft Edge also. Yes, Selenium supports Microsoft Edge as well, right? So, but whenever we talk about some other tools, most of the tools will not support the browser compatibility or OS compatibility, right? If we talk about the QTP, QTP supports only one or two browsers and only Windows OS, not the Linux or maybe the Mac, right? But Selenium supports all the different browsers and different versions. So that is where the Selenium has become the more popular in the market for automation testing. Right, so as we just discussed, yes, Selenium supports all the latest browsers and all the browsers again. Firefox it supports, Internet Explorer including the new versions and old versions, Google Chrome, Opera and Safari. Yes, it supports all the browsers and all the OS. Yes, so if we develop any Selenium test scripts, automation scripts, we can execute those scripts on Windows, Mac, Linux as well. The same scripts can be executed. So let's say I wanted to test my application on Linux or on Mac OS or on Windows with different versions of Windows. Yes, I can go ahead and execute my same test cases on all other OS also, and I may have to see how the application behaves on different browsers and different OS, right? So that is how it will be, right? So this is the main advantage which we have with the Selenium, right? So as Selenium supports all these things, right? So in the same way, if I go to the next slide, so the next slide shows multiple languages what Selenium supports. So this is again the major advantage which Selenium has. Selenium can understand Java language. That means if any one of us knows Java, we can quickly start working or writing some scripts using Java Selenium, and we can automate our application. In the same way, it will understand, or it can understand, or we can start writing the test cases in C Sharp, Ruby, Python, Perl, PHP. So if any one of us are proficient with any of these languages, we can go ahead and start implementing Selenium test cases with these languages. That is the main advantage which we have with the Selenium, right? And the next slide we have is components of Selenium, right? So we will be hearing from most of our friends that hey, whenever we tell that we are going to learn Selenium or we know Selenium, we'll be confused with many components because Selenium has this many components. So few people may talk about IDE, few people may talk about RC, WebDriver and Selenium Grid. What is this exactly? Let's try to understand in detail of these components, right? The same thing. So here Selenium IDE is the first component of Selenium which is used to record and play back some scripts. What does this exactly mean is in our mobiles or somewhere we can record our voice. In the same way, we can open our browser, we can open Selenium tool, IDE tool, and we can start recording, and we can do some set of actions like opening a browser, navigate to some application, log into application, send some email, log out from application, close the browser. So whatever the actions I am doing, all those actions will be recorded by Selenium IDE, right? So Selenium IDE can record those actions, and if I try to click on play button, whatever the actions it has been recorded, the same actions will be played back by Selenium IDE. This is the major feature which we have with the Selenium IDE, right? So just it's a record and playback tool, and it supports only Mozilla Firefox but not any other browsers. We can record and we can play back only on Mozilla Firefox but not any other tools, right? So that is uh, the thing about IDE. We can just record and we can just play back. Just a record and playback tool, and it supports only Mozilla Firefox. And we can't do this on other browsers like Chrome or Internet Explorer or some other browsers. So with this Selenium IDE, we can't do the full-fledged testing. Just a record and playback tool, that's it. So in market, every testing tool has this feature. So even Selenium also has this, right? With this, yes, obviously we can't go with the full-fledged testing. Okay. And the next one is Selenium RC, which is the old version of Selenium, and right now this is deprecated version. So that means we no need to worry about this RC, right? So we no need to worry. So few companies were using this version an year or back, so but now there is no support from Selenium for this version. So everybody switch it to the new version, which we will be calling it as WebDriver, which is the new version of Selenium. And yes, again it supports all new browsers and new versions of browsers also, right? That means here is the place where we will be mostly concentrating on. We will be working mostly on this part, right? So this first component is just to record and playback. Second one is the deprecated, so we no need to worry. So just for information purpose, we are trying to understand what is what exactly. And third one is WebDriver, which is the new version of Selenium, right? And the next one is Grid. So excuse me. Selenium Grid is the one of the component of Selenium where we will be using this grid to run our test cases parallelly on multiple missions or multiple browsers. So in the beginning of our discussion, we discussed that whenever we have to test an application with multiple OS and with multiple browsers, what we have to do is we have to execute. So if we go with a sequential execution, we can't say, let's say if I have 10,000 test cases to be executed and I have very less time, a day or 2 days. Obviously within a day, I cannot complete executing 10,000 test cases with a single mission. Instead of that, we can implement Selenium Grid, which is, I can execute multiple test cases parallelly on multiple browsers or multiple missions. With that, execution will be very fast, right? Execution will be completed very fast. So that is a main advantage which we have with the Selenium Grid. Just it's a network setup. How we are going to set multiple missions connected to Selenium. That is what we are going to achieve it over here, right? So that is the components which we have with the Selenium. ID is the first component which where we can record and play back something, and RC is the second one, which is the deprecated version of Selenium, and the next one is WebDriver, right? And the next one is Grid. right? So WebDriver is the current version of Selenium, and Selenium Grid is used to execute the test cases parallel, right? So that is the use of these components. Okay, so these are the four components which we have the Selenium. So the next slide will just let us know the overview of our complete training, right? So the first stage, so we have different stages of our training, right? So the first stage talks about learning Java. Yes, we know that, yes, if we wanted to talk to our automation tool, obviously we have to know the language which the tool can understand. So Selenium can understand Java, C Sharp, Perl, Python, PHP, Ruby, and so on. So we will try to learn one among those languages, right? So we have chosen Java. So once we complete learning Java, we will switch to learning Selenium. What is this exactly learning Selenium? I will explain in the next slides, right? And then once Selenium basics is done, we will switch to third-party tools, right? So just by learning Selenium or learning Java, we cannot do the full-fledged testing. We also have to depend on some set of third-party tools which we available in the market. So we will try to understand those third-party tools, and we will try to integrate all these three stages, 1 2 3, and finally we will be on stage 4, which is the framework, right? So that by that our course will be ended, right? So these are the 4 different stages which we have in our training process, right? And I'm just wanted to explain what does this exactly mean, learning Selenium. So learning Selenium means, I already told, instead of I open the browser, I will ask Selenium to open the browser. Instead of I am identifying the button and clicking on the button, I will ask Selenium to click on the button. In the same way, radio buttons. So being a human beings, yes, with our knowledge, we know how to identify a button. We know how to identify a radio button or text box or drop down or link or menu or something else. Whatever we see on the web page is a web element. So we know if it is a button, we may have to click on the button. But how we can tell Selenium that Selenium can identify a button and it has to click on the button? That is what we will try to learn as a part of stage 2, right? So with the help of Selenium, right, we will know how to identify a button, click on button, radio buttons, drop downs, text boxes, menus, and pop-up windows, frames, right? And alerts, or whatever we do manually, there is some code to be done through Selenium. All those things can be done with the help of this Selenium API. So that is what we will be learning with Selenium basics. And just now I'm talking about Selenium Grid. So I just wanted to show you the overview of Selenium Grid, how it will look like. Let's say this is our application. This is our application server where it is running. Okay, so here we are. So this is our maybe laptop or our mission. So from here we have something called hub. For this hub we have two nodes, that means mission 1, mission 2. So I can execute my test cases on mission 1, mission 2 also, or I can go with multiple missions also, like this mission 4, 3, and also. So something like this I can link, and I can just link something like this. That means instead of running my test cases in my own local laptop, I'm sending my complete 10,000 test cases to hub. So hub will divide some test cases for mission 1, mission 2, mission 3, and mission 4. So instead of one mission executing, I'm giving 4 missions to execute my test cases. By that, yes, obviously the work will be divided across multiple missions, and the execution will be very fast. That is how it will be. right? So that is the advantage. So this is completely a network setup, nothing more than that. But what we are going to do is, whatever the test cases we developed here using WebDriver, the same test cases will be executed in grid. That's it, nothing more than that. So we are not going to change many things whenever we wanted to execute our test cases with grid, right? So that is the use of Selenium WebDriver and grid, right? So the next slide is very important for us. And this is the common question, 100% expected question whenever we go to any interviews. They will be asking, what is the framework you are using, and can you explain the framework flow with some diagram? If they are not expecting the diagram, if we are able to draw this diagram and we are able to explain the flow of the framework, really the people will be getting impressed, right? So here this diagram contains many things, right? So at this moment, obviously you people may not able to understand, but definitely once we switch to each and every component, we should be able to clearly understand the use of each and everything, right? So that is how it will be. But right now at top level, let me explain what is this exactly happening. So there are many multiple tools we are going to integrate with Selenium. So here we are going to write the test cases, and here we are going to set our environment. So whether I have to test my application on test environment or development environment or stage or production or maybe anything. And all my test data I will be putting in my Excel sheet. All these will be inputs I'm going to give to TestNG, which is my testing framework. It will integrate with Ant, which is a tool which is used to compile and run our test cases. This complete code base I have kept inside an SVN, which is a repository just to store the code. Okay, and that SVN credentials and link I'll be giving to a guy called Jenkins. This guy will be always up and running. This guy will try to fetch or the complete code at some intervals. That means which we will be calling it as nightly builds. That means, let's say if every Monday morning or every Monday night I have to execute some set of test cases, right? Every Monday 8 o'clock I have to run my test cases. So that kind of configurations I can do with Jenkins, right? I can do with Jenkins. So what Jenkins will do, Jenkins will take this complete code base and Jenkins will run the test cases on browsers. It will generate the reports. It will just say how much percent of test cases has been passed, failed. It will capture the screenshots and it will generate the logs also. So nothing to worry. If anybody of you not able to understand this flow, no need to worry. Definitely we will come back again to this slide whenever we switch between the tools, each and every tool integration. So at that point of time we will get a confidence that yes, this is a flow and we should be able to explain to the interviewers very clearly, right? So that is the framework flow which we are going to work. By end of the course we should be able to implement this framework by ourselves, right? So that is the details of the class. And coming back to the timings, so yes, the timings is from 6:30 to 7:30, right? So in the same time, right? So 6:30 to 7:30. So the classes will be for around 30 to 35 days, right? So every day will be having 1 hour class. And if there are any internet issues from my side, I'll just let you know, guys, before a class or maybe in advance also, so that we can postpone the classes if we have. So mostly we may not. If you have any issues, then I will let you know. And for every topic, as we already discussed, I'll be providing the soft copies and also recording sessions, so that you can just go through the recording sections and you can keep practicing. And for almost all concepts we'll be having some assignments. I request you guys to please complete the assignments within a day and try to send me send me the assignments through email so that I'll just go through it and I will let you know the feedback if there are some gaps in these assignments, right? So these are the timings and that is all about it. So if anybody has questions, so please go ahead.